Hello, good people out there on the YouTubes. It is Todd Shannon, data scientist, social commentator, getter of the buckets, and we are back on a Friday night. I'm going live for all you folks there that, in for the night. You old like me, so we don't go out on Friday nights. Friday nights is just a do-nothing evening, and that's what I like doing my Friday nights. Friday nights are not like, looking forward to the weekend. I'm looking forward to the weekend so I can do nothing. But today, FANI WILLIS, the verdict is in. The fix is in. And I'm not going to lie. For most of you, you probably already know the FANI WILLIS verdict. Quite tragic. I got to give it the little magical things because it's like magic. I have no idea how this happened, except for the fact that I know exactly how it happened. I know exactly how it happened. It happened because of what I've been saying for ever now. Well, not forever. I've only been kind of really going hard with my channel since June. But all of you who have been on the Todd Thinks community, all of you who have been with me, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You say, what is that? I am on the record for having been on top of the left's strategy to put black women, mostly incompetent black women, mind you, at the forefront of all of their nefarious deeds and their strategies to topple our democracy or topple our. I hate to say that democracy because the left kind of have rendered that word kind of useless. To topple our society, our republic. How about that? That's a word that they never use. The left likes to put black women front and center so that they can basically you put their strategy on in a place where people are afraid to attack or call out their strategy because they can always then cry sexism, racism, what have you. And what happened today with the FANI WILLIS verdict, of course, like I said, if you haven't heard, if you've been living under a rock, FANI WILLIS, who is the DA, the prosecutor, supposedly prosecuting the Trump RICO case, where supposedly Mr. Trump actually tried to defraud the American people. This is their claim. I got to play the Larry David music because it's so absurd that it must be some sort of tragic comedy, except for it's not funny. Donald Trump supposedly seeking to defraud the American people out of the rightful, free and fair election of 2020. So FANI Wilson prosecuting Mr. Trump. And, of course, she got in hot water because she had a little bit of scandal, a little bit of impropriety in her role as a prosecutor and in her personal life. That which is not becoming of someone, a lady of her status, and a public figure, should be above reproach, at least in a professional sense. And so she went on this tour trying to say she's being persecuted because she's a black female. Well, anyway, everyone expected after we saw the trial, the absolute disaster that it was, how dishonest she was, how dishonest Nathan Wade was, how dishonest everyone was. Who had basically a stake in this case, in particular, the former attorney of Nathan Wade, who told all the goods. He told all the business of Nathan Wade because he was Nathan Wade's personal friend as well as his divorce attorney. And then he got on the stand after he told all the beans to Trump's defense attorney. Then he got on the stand and said, I can't remember anything. So he lied. Everyone knew that he was lying. So he was lying. FANI WILLIS was lying. Nathan Wade was lying. And we just knew that there's no way these people are not going down. And even though I knew that there was this possibility that something like this would happen because, politics, I still thought, I said, this was such a slam dunk case. This is such, I mean, there's one thing to, to play politics and to get verdicts that are unjust because people are protecting, you gotta protect black women. It's one thing for that to be the case, but it's a totally different thing. It's a totally, totally different thing when it is so, so, so blatantly in your face and you just go, nobody's that stupid to, at least if you go in a store and you're going to steal something, at least try to hide it. But what do you expect, right? From in a society, well, now people just go right into the store, they grab something off the shelf and they walk out. At least they do that in the blue states. They don't do that. They don't do that where I am. But in any case, we got people that are so blatantly just in your face with their evil. And I'm just like, there's no way they're going to let her off after she got on the stand and lied. And they basically proved that she lied. And, but she got away with it anyway. So this is one of those things where I have proven to be right, but I am not happy to say that I'm right. Some things you anticipate, but you don't hope for them. See, the hopes for something, you have to want it to be true, but you might anticipate something. That doesn't mean you want it to be true. So I anticipated that something like this might happen, but I didn't hope for it, right? I was hoping for the opposite. And unfortunately, I am right. I have proven to be right again because Judge McAfee, the judge on this case, if you see my thumbnail, you'll see that I've got a little arrow pointing to him as a coward. And, those are strong words. I know that's very, very strong words, but I think the words are warranted. I think that title is warranted because, like I said, this was such an obvious case of her guilt, her misconduct, the conflicts of interest, the impropriety was so in your face that what he showed, even in his judgment and in his writings, which we will review here in a moment, even though he had the judgment, right? Even though he had the judgment to make the right decision, he didn't have the courage to pull the trigger. And that's why I say it feels a little bit like cowardice. Feels a little bit like cowardice. In any case, we're going to take a look at what I think are the most I think intriguing legal decisions. Because here's the thing about these cases. I'm smart enough to know when I'm in over my depth, right? When the reason why I am so often right. Round of applause for myself. The reason why I am so often right is because I try not to have strong opinions about things that I do not understand. Some of you hear me saying, oh, he said he's always right. I always think I'm right, right? If I didn't think I was right, I wouldn't say what I was saying. No one shares an opinion that they know is wrong. Okay, so by definition, anyone who has an opinion thinks they're right. But anyway, I try not to have strong opinions about things that I do not understand. Excuse me. And this is, I think, a key component about having a high percentage of rightness. Don't have strong opinions about things you do not understand. And because this is not only a moral issue and a public issue and a cultural issue, it is also a legal issue, I have learned to defer to much more developed and much more capable legal minds than my own. So the thing that I found was Megyn Kelly. I watched there's a guy I follow on YouTube called Nate the Lawyer. I like Nate the Lawyer's content. He did his live stream earlier today. Nate the Lawyer is great. And he kind of read through some of the judgment and some of the things that were said. So good content there. Viva Fry, who's a Canadian transplant. Now I think he lives in Florida. Always a good watch for some legal analysis. But Alan Dershowitz, Mr. Dershowitz, Harvard, I think Harvard law professor or something to that effect, one of the greatest legal minds in the country. He was on Megyn Kelly's show today, and so I thought, hey, why don't we just listen to this guy? And this guy, I think, had the best overall legal analysis. So we're gonna listen to what they have to say. Oh, wait a second, that is not the correct one. So let me go back. You know, I tell you what, man. Oftentimes these things happen, and I think I figured out though how to fix them. Fortunately. All right. Let's have a look. Miss Megyn Kelly and Alan Dershowitz.
Everything that would have led to the actual conflict of interest finding. If it was going to lead him there, he just continued to downplay it. I'll give you a couple of examples. He talked about how she brought in Wade, that she had extended an offer to former Governor Roy Barnes, who declined, that the contract gave him $250 an hour, relatively low amount by Metro Atlanta standards for an attorney with Wade's years of service. No evidence was introduced that indicates Wade ever received permission to exceed his monthly hour caps. Okay, you could focus on that, or you could focus on the fact that every single one of his bills was rubber stamped by FANI Willis with zero review and paid without question, even though some of them looked very sketchy, like billing 24 hours in a day. So he focused on, okay, well, I didn't see any evidence showing he went over the monthly cap. Well,
all right. So what she's discussing here is Judge McAfee, in his decision, noted that, hey, Nathan Wade was paid, he wasn't paid necessarily top dollar for an attorney with his experience or what have you, in his hourly rate. He never went over his hourly rate limits. And so his conclusion from that is that, there's no hard evidence that there was a conflict of interest monetarily with respect to how Nathan Wade was compensated. Now, the thing that I find so weird and bizarre about this is that here that would make sense if Nathan Wade and Fannie Willis weren't getting busy. if they weren't doing the deed, if you understand what I'm saying. That's when that would matter. And so this is why I say Scott McAfee is a coward. How obvious is it that because they are in a relationship? Now, to me, the way I always thought about this, people focus on the money from the vacations and the trips, which that she claims she reimbursed them in cash, which nobody believes. But those are like peanuts. It was like a few $1,000s here, a few $1,000s there. I mean, these are people who are lawyers in Atlanta. You telling me that a couple $1,000 trip is really worth, I don't know. I mean, it's just not that. I mean, we're not talking about a whole lot of money with respect to the trips here. So I don't believe that she reimbursed them, but I don't think that Fannie Willis, for example, couldn't afford to go on those trips on her own. I just don't think that the money was significant enough from the standpoint of the trips. But where the real problem is that I look at this contract awarded or this job awarded to Nathan Wade as basically a down payment on their future life together forever. I just think about it. If Nathan Wade was a real romantic interest with the possibility of a long-term developing relationship, then why wouldn't it be the case that she was giving him money and awarding him this contract in the hopes that they would be together indefinitely? That way, the $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 that she ends up paying them to do this job, now that money comes back to her in the form of him being the wife of a guy that she paid $700,000 to. I don't understand why that didn't factor in. But anyway, let's continue.
That shouldn't determine this. Then he went on to talk about their travels together. Between October and May of 23, they traveled together on 4 occasions: Miami, Aruba, all the trips, Belize, and so on, Napa. and he shows you what Wade paid, including their numerous day trips around the Georgia area. And he says, in total, defendants point to an aggregate documented benefit of at most $12,000 to $15,000 in the district attorney's favor. Then he says, the DA and Wade testify these expenditures were not meant as gifts and not designed to benefit the DA. Both testified that the DA regularly reimbursed Wade in cash. And if not reimbursed, the DA covered a comparable related expense. For example, she testified she reimbursed him in cash for the Aruba trip, which she estimated cost around $2,000, and that she, quote, gave him money for both cruises. She further claimed she reimbursed him for the entirety of the Belize trip, and that she paid for Napa Valley excursions. Finally, while Wade could have bought meals in 2020 totaling more than $100, she would also regularly pay for his meals. Then he says the following, Alan. Such a reimbursement practice may be unusual, and the lack of any documentary corroboration understandably concerning. Yet the testimony, here we go, withstood direct contradiction, was corroborated by other evidence, for example, her payment of airfare for two on the 2022 Miami trip, and was not so incredible as to be inherently unbelievable.
So you hear that? A bunch of nonsense, right? There, to me, this is, a bunch of details that don't matter given the much broader picture, is that it's clear that Fani Willis wanted Nathan Wade to be a long-term relationship partner, right? And if you're telling me that there is no incentive for a person to, here's the thing, the money may not have come back to her because it's a gamble, right? She's taking a risk. But I gotta imagine that's one in favor of, if you're Nathan Wade, you said, is Fani Willis a keeper? Well, she did reward me that contract and pay me $500,000 when I kind of had no experience prosecuting these cases. And then also she let me hit on multiple occasions. So, that bodes well for Fani. But I want to get to Alan Dershowitz here, because I think when he starts to talk, it actually becomes much more evident what the issue is.
I have to tell you, I don't think the judge believes that. I just think he found that.
Agreed.
You talk about 4 hours a day billing. I remember a lawyer who framed in his office a bill in which he charged for 27 hours in a day because he had traveled internationally and it had changed the time. And, it's possible, but I have to tell you, no jury would believe that. And a judge should not believe that. She would not. If she had been charged criminally with accepting money, she'd be convicted. There are people in jail on far, far less evidence. And when she's lied about when her relationship began, why do you believe her on these issues of undocumented payments? His decision is scandalous. And it's not his naive take, because I think he's smart. I think he just did everything in his power to be able to say to an appellate court, look, I've evaluated all the evidence, it raises questions, but there's not enough here to find that she materially benefited. She materially benefited, probably to the tune of thousands of dollars, and she had an affair that started before she hired him, and she committed perjury on the stand. And when that happens, the prosecutor should be disqualified. This is the wrong decision made for all the wrong reasons.
Facts. Alan Dershowitz dropping knowledge. Here's the thing: the idea that when you read through some of the things that he said, absolutely scathing. He says he still has trouble. He said that he knows that they were lying, or there were clear instances of them not telling the truth. It's almost like this was some sort of poison pill. And what a lot of people are saying, and I'm going to bring you in closer, and then we'll go back to some more of his comments, which I thought were quite astute from a legal standpoint. When people talk about what the judge tried to do was try to split the baby, and respectfully, I object to this. Right, splitting. Well, let me say this. Technically, yes, he did split the baby, but he He actually split the baby. As a matter of fact, I would say maybe he stabbed the baby. Maybe he stabbed the baby. And here's the thing about the very famous example of King Solomon when there were two women. One woman killed her baby, right? And then she tried to steal another lady's baby, and then the lady said, "No, that's not my baby. You killed your baby. Don't try to steal my baby." So they went to King Solomon because no one could settle the dispute. They were arguing over it, and he said, "Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Just let me split the baby, and then I'll give half to you, half to you, and then that's how we'll solve it, right?" And people, should remember, obviously, that King Solomon never actually split the baby. The whole reason why he did that was to try to tease out the motivations of the women and what they were actually trying to do. And he knew that the real mother would never allow her child to be killed, even if it meant that she couldn't have the child. And so that was the whole point of it. Scott McAfee didn't offer to split the baby to try to tease out who was lying. He didn't have some shrewd, legal approach or a shrewd line of questioning that could tease out the motivations. He didn't do that. He just basically said, "All right, let me just kill the baby so nobody gets what they want." Nobody got what they wanted. Everyone who were pro FANI and everyone who's, a Democrat shill who's basically saying, "Hey, we need to get Trump no matter what," right? And then you get all the, support black women, believe all black women and all of this stuff, right? And Fannie Willis and all of her, going to the church, crying racism and all that nonsense. Those people didn't get what they wanted. Everyone who supported Fannie Wilson didn't get what they wanted because obviously it was a scathing report and also quite a sharp rebuke from the judge. And then obviously they found, I guess, Nathan Wade, that he did something wrong because part of the condition was that Nathan Wade had to be disqualified, but Fannie Willis could stay on. It's kind of weird. Somebody pointed it out and said it's kind of like finding two people in a bank vault and only taking one of them to jail. Kind of absurd, but in any case, he didn't split the baby. He just killed the baby, right? He didn't offer to split the baby in order to find justice. He just basically split the baby. Okay, so let's continue.
He goes on to say, the opinion is full of criticisms of her and Nathan Wade. So he's trying to telegraph to us what you said, that he knows. He knows what you and I know. He just didn't have the stones to actually do what was right. Right. He says on page 9 of the opinion, again, this is him denying that there's an actual conflict of interest. And so the audience is clear. He then went on to say, but notwithstanding the absence of evidence of an actual conflict of interest, the appearance of a conflict, the appearance of impropriety is enough for me to do something. But it's not enough for me to DQ them. I'm going to give them the opportunity to cure. They have the opportunity to cure their impropriety. And that's how we got to the place where he said, either bounce Wade or bounce yourself. But back on the first point of actual conflict. Without sufficient evidence that the DA acquired a personal stake in the prosecution or that her financial arrangements had any impact on the case, the defendant's claims of an actual conflict must be denied. Then he goes on to add, this finding is by no means an indication that the court condones this tremendous lapse in judgment or the unprofessional manner of the district attorney's testimony during the evidentiary hearing. Rather, it is the undersigned's opinion that Georgia law does not permit the finding of an actual conflict for simply making bad choices, even repeatedly. And it is this trial court's duty to confine itself to the relevant issues and applicable law. And
what a load of greasy gobbledygook, right? What a load of trying to basically skate and try to wordsmith your way out of handling your business and taking care of your responsibility. It's a bunch of legal nonsense.
And then quickly, Alan, he adds, this is important, and we're going to talk more about this as the hour goes on, other forums or sources of authority, such as the General Assembly, the Georgia State Ethics Commission, the State Bar of Georgia, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, or the voters of Fulton County, that's 5 at least, may offer feedback on any unanswered questions that linger. But those are not the issues determinative to the defendant's motions alleging an actual conflict. To me, this is him basically saying, I know these are dirtbags. I get it. Trust me. But that's a matter for these 5 other agencies to now pursue and investigate vigorously. For purposes of this case, the farthest I'll go is choose one, Fannie or Wade stays.
But he left out the most important agencies, and that is prosecutorial agencies. There ought to be a criminal investigation. There ought to be a criminal prosecution. There is, in my mind, proof beyond a reasonable doubt that they committed a perjury. He, in fact, says unprofessionally as a witness. What does that mean? Unprofessionally as a witness? She didn't act disrespectfully or anything like that. She lied. That's more than unprofessional. That's perjury. This is a clear, open and shut case of perjury and probably conspiracy to commit perjury and probably obstruction of justice, maybe witness tampering. And if they don't open a criminal investigation, who will guard the guardians? Who will prosecute the prosecutors? We're all at risk when prosecutors can act the way she did without any possibility that they will be prosecuted for what seems obvious to have been perjury about so many different things. As I said before, people that she has prosecuted and are in prison based on far, far less evidence than the evidence against her and Willis, against her and Wade.
So you see that. And I have to say, respect to Alan Dershowitz. That guy, as far as I know, he is, for the most part, on the left. I don't think he's ever, he's pretty moderate. He's a pretty down the middle guy. But he, from what I understand, mostly votes for Democrats. But this guy is actually just dropping knowledge, because what he's actually saying is that what everyone knows, right? He's saying out loud what everyone knows. Everyone knows she lied. She perjured herself. This lady is a prosecutor. She's supposed to be on the other side of the law, seeking justice, sending people to prison when they break the law. And how can we have any respect for someone who is breaking the law while they're supposed to be charged with the chief law enforcement officer, or one of the chief law enforcement officers in her entire state? I think the attorney general is the chief law enforcement officer, but she's the district attorney, obviously charged with prosecuting crime. Now, here's what I find really interesting about this. I think the Trump era. This is I think quite a interesting phenomenon. The Trump era of so-called justice is equivalent to the, what would I say? What would you say? The steroid era in baseball. It's like all of these. It's like all of these. It's like all of these decisions, these legal decisions. Almost all of them should be seen with an asterisk. And what it shows is that when people have the capacity to do these things, despite the fact that there has been obvious impropriety, and they basically don't have the courage to pull the trigger. They don't have the courage to pull the trigger on basically booting someone like FANI Willis out. Then everyone looks at that and goes, our courts have been completely politicized. Scott McAfee basically did what he needed to do to protect himself, and he didn't do the right thing for the people. And so to me, it's like the steroid era. Look at all of these so-called cases against Trump. The E. Jean Carroll situation, an absolute farce, where now he's been ordered to pay 80-some millions of dollars for a supposed SA, I'm not going to say it, an assault of a certain kind of nature. And there's no proof that anything like that happened. Complete lawfare. Then you got all of these bogus court cases like the one FANI Willis is prosecuting. And so all of this stuff needs to be, it's just a one bit asterisk on it, right? This is like this legal environment from a political sense is like the steroid era. It's like, yeah, all of that happened, but, and I remember the steroid era. It was quite entertaining. I remember Barry Bonds and, not Barry Bonds, but Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. They were chasing a home run record. They were juiced up on the roids. They were hitting home runs, seems like every single day, every single night. And everyone was just like, oh, it was pretty exciting. But then we found out, oh, that's why they were doing that, because they were cheating. that's basically what the Democrats have introduced in today's era. I think there's one other kind of legal analysis that I thought was telling here, and we'll listen to that again from the Megyn Kelly Show.
Well, as a practical matter, I think it's the best thing that could have happened to Trump and the co-defendants, because she's just destroyed in terms of her reputation, which she deserves by the way she conducted herself, but she's still in the case. And my thing with this from the beginning, Megan, has been I've tried to explain to people on the basis of this sprawling blunderbuss indictment that she's incompetent. That she's indicted a RICO case that's not a RICO. She's tried to do an overarching conspiracy that's not a conspiracy. And, everybody sort of says, oh, okay, well, and then we see this situation where, you get an up close view on how these guys operate. And you have to ask yourself, after watching this performance, do you really think these guys can run a RICO case, which is a sophisticated criminal prosecution? So from Trump's perspective, it seems to me it's like a triple play for him, because she's a tainted prosecutor. This is an issue that I believe you can appeal. I heard you and Alan talking about this at the end. I think you can appeal this under Georgia law. So he also gets the delay that he's looking for, but he gets to keep her in the case and she'll screw the case up. So I don't see how, legally, I feel very differently about it. Legally, I think the judge is off his rocker. I've never heard of a thing where you have a conflict situation and the judge is oozing off every page is that there are lingering questions, continuing questions, the cloud over it, the scent of mendacity. Those are the cases where you disqualify the person, I mean.
So he did all of that and he still kept her. But I want to just pause and just address something he said, because he says Fani Willis is incompetent. And this goes back to my whole thing with the black girl magic stuff, right? I did a video maybe about a month ago about Fani Willis. I called it Black Girl Tragic. And once again, I've been saying this forever, why the left loves black women. And what was obvious from the beginning is that Fani Willis is in over her head. She's over her skis, as they say. And she's obviously incompetent. But I think, I can't prove this, but I'm pretty sure that is correct. I think this is by design. Okay? The left, first of all, they can turn any situation towards to their benefit. So whatever happens, if Donald Trump loses, right, then they can say, score one for the justice and for black women, blah 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 blah. But if he wins, then they can say, oh, this is just more examples of misogyny. If Fani Willis gets taken off the case, more example of racism and misogyny, and this country is just, we haven't changed, and here another white man is getting away with crimes, blah blah blah, right? So no matter what, they get to spin it in this way to try to gin up a bunch of emotional nonsense where people get outraged over some so-called injustice that never happened. But the whole thing, to come back to Scott McAfee, which he alluded to, he'd never seen a case like this. On every page of his decision, he clearly says they lied. They looked like they might have perjured themselves. She acted unprofessionally. All reasons why she should be disqualified, but he kept her on the case. So here you have this white male judge basically being pitted against this female black district attorney who's going around. And by the way, he mentioned this in how improper it was that she was going around to these black churches stirring up racial strife. He called that out specifically in his judgment and how improper that was. Although I guess he still thought that wasn't enough to take her off the case. But here you got this white man up against this black female. And he can't bring himself to pull the trigger, and this is by design. This is why she's on the case, because they always want to say, hey, no matter what he did and no matter how justified he may have been to take her off the case, they were going to say that he attacked a black woman and he couldn't bring himself to do it. And that's why I say he's a coward. We got to have people who are not intimidated by the rhetoric, who don't fall into these sort of like these traps where they can emotionally blackmail you and call you racist and misogynist, and we have to have people who are immune to that. And I don't think Scott McAfee proved to be susceptible to this sort of tactics that the left use, which is why they chose a Fannie Willis in the first place.
I mean, if you have a situation like the classic one in that I saw many times in federal law, especially if you're doing like drug cases and racketeering cases where you get some dirty lawyers occasionally, is if you have a situation where the lawyer and the client are both under investigation by the same prosecutor's office, the lawyer has to get out of the case because he's got a motive to curry favor with the government that lingers throughout the proceedings. So with every decision that the lawyer makes, you have to try to decide, is he serving his own interest or is he serving the client's interest? And even though it's not as obvious, that works the same way for the prosecutor as it does for the defense lawyer. She's got a lot of problems here. She's got potential federal investigation. She's got potential state investigation. She's got professional investigation. And she's got a lot of motives that are her personal motives that may collide with some of the things that would be best for the case and best for Fulton County. That's the kind of case where there's such an appearance of impropriety, the lawyer's got to go. And you don't solve it by taking out half the problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason he did that, the way he styled it, was it could be ongoing. She testified that even though they allegedly stopped their romance last summer, that they're, quote, closer than ever. And given that, a reasonable person could think, oh, the benefit to her or to him will be ongoing or could resume even their romantic relationship, which is like, what are you saying? All the proof of the prior conflicted behavior is right here in front of you on a silver platter. Whether it's ongoing or potentially likely to resume is not the standard for determining whether there's an actual conflict or the appearance of one.
Yeah, this is like with all due respect to Dr. Phil, this is a trial, not Dr. Phil, right? So the judge's responsibility, believe it or not, is the case. Nathan and Fanny are going to have to work their relationship out on their own, and they'll have to go to another forum for that, right? But the judge is responsible for the integrity of the case, the public integrity of a judicial proceeding. So, I'm sure they very much appreciate his advice about how they can steer the future of their relationship and their prospects, and we'll all be clutching our pearls over that. But his job is the appearance of impropriety in a judicial proceeding, which can't be erased by taking out. If you've now developed a record where you have two people in collusion who there's very powerful evidence that they misled the court, even if the judge shies away from drawing the conclusion of that, but like lays out every dot for everyone with an IQ of 11 to be able to connect that that's what they did, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't solve the problem by taking away one of the people who was colluding, leaving the other one in under circumstances where you, the judge, are admitting that there's a lingering problem here, that there are lingering suspicions, that there are lingering motives that she has to act in her own behalf as opposed to the state's behalf. And again, that's a layup to remove the lawyer.
Right. So here's two separate layers. Lawyers saying, one saying this is a layup. Alan Dershowitz says it's an open and shut case. And there you have it. Fanny, this situation, let's just talk about what we learned from Scott McAfee, the judge, because I think, we already know about Fanny. Fanny is, unfortunately, is a low character person. That's what she's demonstrated to be. She's having a sexual relationship with a married man. She goes to the church and tries to pretend like, she's being persecuted because she's a black girl. When no, you are being called out because you have an inappropriate sexual relationship with someone who you hired and paid money, someone with whom you had the prospects of having a long-term relationship with, and therefore a conflict of interest. That's why you were being investigated. But we already know about Fannie Willis. So I want to talk about Scott McAfee, the judge, because he kind of represents the kind of person that I think, to go back to this concept of splitting the baby. The whole splitting the baby thing, as I already explained, is not really what he did. He didn't split the baby. He stabbed the baby. He killed the baby. And what he was basically sacrificed the baby. And what he was hoping to do is appease. That's really where what people mean when they say he split the baby. He was hoping to appease both sides, right? He reached this scathing decision saying, yeah, all types of fishy stuff going on there, but I'm still going to leave her on. And so he kind of kicks the can down the road and maybe hopes that the bar will investigate her, or there'll be some other thing that kind of trips her up, or that he kind of poisons the well so much with respect to Fannie Willis's credibility that he feels like the law will kind of, even though the legal wheels roll slow, that they will eventually come out to find justice, and that, Trump will be acquitted because there are all kinds of scandal and clouds around Fannie Willis and her credibility and blah, blah, blah. So maybe he thought that it would be remedied that way. But far more often than not, what I see is people like Scott McAfee trying to appease everyone, and then they end up appeasing no one, right? Trying to be everything to everyone you end up being nothing to anyone. And I'm reminded of this story that I watched some time ago. I actually posted a video about it on my channel that almost nobody watched. But it was about basically these basically New York Republicans. Being a Republican in New York is kind of like, it seems like it's like being a snowball in hell or something like that. But like, basically, there was this, chapter of Republicans in New York, and they had some, little bit of activity going on. But basically, that whole organization was kind of, finding young professionals who were young Republicans, young conservatives. They had these little things going, but it was very, very, very pathetic, very paltry. And the reason why is that he explained it. He said, basically, the Republicans in New York were like Democrat light, right? They were basically Democrats that sucked. Too far to the right to be Democrats, but not far enough to the left to actually be a Democrat, right? And not far enough to the right actually to be a useful Republican. So that's why they had such a pathetic kind of showing, and their organization was basically dwindling and dying. And then this guy comes in, and basically he causes their organization to grow by leaps and bounds. And now there's a very strong Republican presence, or conservative presence in New York City, right, amongst the professional class. And he came in with a strong MAGA, America First type attitude. And everyone, when he did it, everyone's just like, oh, it's not going to work here. That's not going to work here. No, that's exactly what will work, because the contrast and the difference of trying to be something distinct, right? If you're going to be something, then be that thing. Stop trying to be everything to everyone, because believe it or not, when people, the polarization doesn't hurt you as much as you think it is. And that's why I have a lot of respect for what Donald Trump has been able to do. He's very polarizing, but the thing that I have to respect about Donald Trump is that he doesn't change who he is based on what people say. I respect that. He doesn't put his finger to the wind. You may not like who he is, but he's not going to change it. I respect that. As somebody like Donald, basically you take someone like Joe Biden, who's basically whatever you want him to be. I mean, to use a crude term, he's just basically a political whore, right? He just 10 years ago, he was saying completely different things than what he's saying now. He was, not for gay marriage, before he was Barack Obama's vice president. He was saying things that would nowadays would be considered quite based. Joe Biden, but most people don't know this. Many people do know it, but Joe Biden wrote the 1993 crime bill, which is, interestingly enough, the only good thing he's ever really done, in my opinion, because New York City was an absolute war zone. Many of our major cities were war zones, and crime was rampant. And from that time on, we saw a steady decline in major cities for like almost 2 decades. It was an incredible impact on crime, and everybody, all of these woke people cried about it because it was mass incarceration, or AKA putting the criminals in jail. Okay, that was a good thing. But could you imagine Joe Biden even remotely considering anything like that now? He's so beholden to these nut job far left people right now that he would never be that. And that's because Joe Biden has never been anything but a person who is hungry for power, and he will be whatever he needs to be in order to get it. And so, Scott McAfee, you failed the people. You failed to do your job. It was disgraceful. But now we're going to see what's going to happen, because I think what he did was he tried to, I guess I'll give him a little bit of credit, give a little poison pill on the way out, and to try to make sure that if he didn't get her, then someone else will. So we'll see what that's about. Anyway, friends, I wanted to get in here, weigh in on this. It's late on a Friday night, 10 p.m. Thank you for sticking with me. Hey, if you're not a subscriber to Todd Things, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Tell somebody about my content. Go look around on my channel. Go find a video that you might like. There's got to be something there that you like, some pretty good stuff. I appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, friends, God bless you.